Hello, everybody. Welcome to day 3 of Virtual HorrorCon. This is the Exploring the Occult panel. Thank you for joining us. We are going to talk a little bit about our various magical practices in our real life and what the occult means to us beyond the gaming table. But let's start off with some introductions. I am your moderator. My name is Lysa Penrose. I am the marketing manager over at TTRPG and Dungeon Masters Guild. And oh my gosh, I told everyone to be prepared with a brief description of their practice, and I don't know what my brief description is. I am a nature-based secular witch. And then we can go in clockwise manner around the panel. We'll start with Jacky.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jacky. I am a freelance tabletop RPG writer and editor. I'm also the creative lead for Unbreakable Publishers, where we try to uplift Asian stories with Asian creators. And I guess the best way to describe my practice is that it's a literal East meets West, because I do combine some traditional Taoist practices along with some of the Western practices that I've adopted over time.
Very cool. What about you, TK?
Hello, it's me. It's TK. I write spooky stories on the internet. If you like them, read them. If you don't, tell your friends to read them. For me personally, I practice Ifa animism, which is a form of Western African spiritualism that usually remits spiritual and supernatural meanings to ancestors and naturalistic spirits as opposed to deities.
And last but not least, we have Friday.
Hi, that's me. I'm Friday. I own a little tea shop in Seattle called Friday Afternoon Tea. I cater mostly to nerds and witches, so I feel like I'm really in the right place here. And my personal practice is a whole big mishmash of things. I feel like Jacky and I have a little bit of in common, that combining of cultural backgrounds. I've got the like Irish Druidic pagan side of the family, and then the like Mexican Santeria, like Catholic indigenous side of the family, and I just sort of pick and choose as I please, as the vibe suits me, and smush it all together and end up somewhere around kitchen witch, farm witch, tea witch, vibe worker. So that's me.
I love that.
Nice.
As the vibe suits me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did grow up in California in the 90s, so vibe is everything.
Yeah, you're right.
While we are going through my list of prepared questions as moderator, if there are folks who are watching this live, we are totally down to answer any specific questions that you have about the occult. So throw those questions into the chat. If you could put question in all caps, that will help me notice them, and we will weave them in throughout as it makes sense. But to start us off, let's figure out some definitions. So in the context of this conversation we're about to have, how would you define the occult? What does that mean for you?
Are you going to call on us? I don't know.
Let's say if you don't people are welcome to just jump in and chat, but if you're scared of interrupting someone, do a finger raise and I will call on you. I don't know if Friday is doing a finger raise, but
talk with my hands even when it's just in my mind. No. So like, yes, but also I just hold my face. I do have some thoughts on this. So for me, the occult is kind of, I'm going to say some real woo-woo hippie shit, but also like, whatever. I feel like that's why we're here. So the occult, I feel like, speaks to like a non-visible, non-tangible kind of exploration. I feel like it's always that term and kind of the concept of the occult is more about permission than definition, at least for me, by which I mean like allowing yourself an openness and allowing yourself an exploration to experience things that aren't kind of in the day-to-day quotidian, like, you know, normal like life, things that are outside of what's immediately perceptible. So I think that's really a flexible concept. And I'm talking like, herbalism and being in touch with like energies that are running through plants. I'm talking about also like, higher mathematics and fractal work and repeating patterns. I'm talking about like deep meditation and astral projection. So you're a math one?
I was a neo-Pythagorist for a short time in my life.
You gotta get out.
Yes.
So much.
No, now we are best friends. You don't even understand.
I hope everyone in chat.
Away from math.
Yeah, I hope everyone in chat was prepared. This is now a math panel. Sorry.
Yeah. The physics of occultism.
I would honestly be so in.
Oh man, I could talk about metaphysics and physics for hours.
So that's a very broad definition. But I chose these panelists because I know you all have different backgrounds and kind of different ways that you practice. Does anyone have anything else to add about what the occult means for them and where they're going to be speaking from? TK.
So this is probably just from my background as a horror writer. Every time I see the word occult, and I'm sure that part of this has to do with the way that we're brought up, what my age growing up in the 90s and early 2000s and stuff, when I see the words occult, I think of it the same way as like, oh, this is a fictional aesthetic. Whereas spiritualism will usually, and cosmology will usually encompass a lot of going into the metaphysical and stuff like that. When I see the words occult, I'm like, oh, this is a fiction book. Like this is a fictional thing. And there's something about it that the idea that occult is purposefully obfuscated from people's normal perceptions. It's beyond, it's supernatural, which a whole other level of supernatural. That's a good movie. Anyway, watch that movie. But the idea that it's like beyond perception, beyond like day-to-day perception for the everyday person is what the occult is. It's a mystery. But for me, it's sort of the same way where like especially in the early 2000s with like Wicca and everything. Oh my gosh, smacking straight into my mic with Wicca and everything, where they're like, there's a difference between magic with and without a K. Magic is stagecraft and magic with a K is magical practice. That's how I kind of feel about the idea of like spiritualism versus the occult. And this is just me personally, is like, it's more of an aesthetic, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What about you, Jacky?
So I definitely lean on, so from my perspective, in my experience, it's like I always looked at the occult as those parts of like, it's your own personal journey too. So it's like, not only is it about exploring and I also feel like there's always like that element of like learning and discovery. So it's like there's a mystery, but it's not a mystery of like the cosmic sense. It's more the inner mystery of yourself. And so it's always like that kind of self-personal journey and your own understanding of yourself, how you connect with the world and beyond that, and what is perceived and not. So I always look at it as that's what the occult is. And I also look at it as, and see, I think I actually sometimes will treat occult as that mixture of like, where it's both like there's actual practical applications and then there's not practical applications, because it's this weird thing that basically was a bunch of Victorians just took over one day and just said, this is now a hobby for us. And we're like, and everyone else who's actually in the occult was just like, but this is not a hobby. Well, we're going to make it into a hobby now. And we're like, okay.
Like yoga.
Womp.
I strip all the serious spiritualism from this. Sorry.
Why must you wound me this way, TK?
Oh, goodness gracious. All right.
Yes, that's really what it is. A cult is like yoga. That's really what happened.
Yeah, so I'm going to be saying the word occult probably a whole bunch as moderator. I also will say the word magical practice. So now you know a little bit what in particular we mean when we're using those words. So let's get a little bit more context about our panelists here. Tell me, how did your magical practice begin? Who wants to raise a finger? Jacky, you can start us this time.
At the tender age of 6. No, actually, seriously, it was at the age of 6. I think what happened for me was, so I did, as I grew up Chinese, so like there's already a lot of practices and things you have to do with like that's either Buddhist or Taoist or Confucian, and so they all blend, so it's kind of, because they all kind of just morphed together. And then what happened was, I remember in my grandparents' house there was always like a bunch of deck of cards, and so I started just playing with the deck of cards by myself because I was the only child. And over time, when I was starting to like kind of figure things out about our family spiritualism, but also just the fact that like playing cards also had like actually a purpose besides just being something like for games. And so there were books that I started looking for. And then so I started actually doing, so my first real practices were things with cartomancy in the very beginning. And then it morphed into eventually tarot in my teens, because it's the 2000s and everyone's is going through the Wicca phase. So everyone's just like, we got to learn about the tarot. And it's just like, and then like around, I think around 2006 and 2007, I met a bunch of people who were basically very into learning about the Lesser Keys of Solomon. And so that was an interesting time of my life. And then, but okay, I will say that the math part was always just something that I developed naturally, because I was the math elite in my school for like the longest time. So like, I think I found out about the cult of Pythagoras around the age of 12. And then I was like, wait, I can understand numbers and what they mean in the universe. And then that was an interesting spiral that lasted my entire 10 years of my life. It got me into numerology, which then helped me get into the I Ching, and it got me into Taoism through that way. So that's how I eventually got to Taoism.
It's such a windy path, right?
Yeah.
Also, I was laughing inside at TK's suffering while you talked about math. That was very fun for me personally.
I just want to pop in just so super quickly and say, I'm sorry. So quantum physics and the Keys of Solomon were your introduction to numerology?
Yes.
There's something so funny about that, because like to me that's like the idea that you're like, yes, and then we had like all the fractals and everything, and then I thought, what if I checked my horoscope today?
Well, that's what happened was, because like at around 8 or 9, I started recognizing patterns. Like I started seeing like numbers that were correlating to like things like the golden ratio, among other things, like, the power of 3, et cetera, et cetera. So it was just one of those observations as a kid, because you're a kid and you're really hyper observant of these things. And you're just going, wait, why are these things always constantly happening in the exact same sequences or in the same series of numbers? And then you just go, and then you start looking at those things up, and then you're going, wait, there's actually a greater meaning behind all this. I must know. And that's how it happened.
At 8 or 9.
I gotta say,
chime in.
Yeah, similar background, Jacky. I cannot believe how much we are becoming best friends right now. So my father is a theoretical mathematician. Like he has his PhD in theoretical math, and he's also really into psychedelics. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about that, so I'm just gonna leave it there. But so those things combine in a very spiritual way. And so my whole childhood was very much full of, here's how numbers form patterns, and here's how you can look for deeper meaning in the universe through mathematics. And like one of my earliest childhood memories was my dad wrote me a computer program when I was like 5 or 6, where you could just put numbers in different input fields and it would generate for you a fractal, and you could choose, like what set you wanted to, Julia set or a Mandelbrot set or whatever. And, and and you could infinitely zoom and you could change the color scape and everything. And it was my favorite toy as a tiny, tiny child. I was like barely older than a toddler. And I was like, this is the shit, you know?
Toys to dissociate to.
Yeah. And of course, my father is like, so when you're abducted by space aliens, as runs in our family, this is the language that they will understand. And I was like, absolutely, yes, 100%. So I feel like that's kind of where I started, was space aliens speak in fractals. So you should really know higher mathematics as like a 5-year-old. And I was like, definitely, absolutely. I'm on the same page. Let's go. And that's just like the family concept of you know, what's going on in the universe. And then I was raised on a pagan spiritual retreat in the redwoods of Central California. So all about that like drum circle, you know, kind of life. Although I will say that my earliest divination exercises were less in tarot. We got into that like a little older, but my grandfather taught me how to read bones and entrails really young, because again, farm witch, like this is what you do. That's what's around, and so it was all, you know, scattered sticks or stones or tea leaves or, you know, whatever. It was just kind of whatever farm things were around. So I did develop a serious affinity for life and death cycles very, very young, and a real comfort for them. And I think also being Irish Mexican, just death culture looks a little bit different than it does for, you know, mainstream white America. This very like death positive kind of household, and it just sort of was. And it wasn't a fuss. It just sort of was, you know, and the cycles of creation and destruction were very much explored and celebrated and talked about as a child. And so I'm like still really into all of those concepts of destruction, regeneration, life and death, etc. And those really stuck with me. And then, yeah, my grandmother was an herbalist and my grandfather was a wizard, by which I mean his whole family, like way back, was like Irish Druidic pagan. And then he did a lot of studies with this Hopi shaman who was a very close friend of the family. And he was like, dope, I can combine these things and like have this great healing, you know, practice that I do. But he was like, I'm not going to call myself a shaman because that's not like, you know, it's not my realm. I learned with this guy, but I'm not, you know, of this guy's like lifestyle. So he was like, I'm a wizard, that I can say as like an Irish guy, I can say that. So my grandpa was a wizard. And yeah, a totally unrelated fact that is fun. He had 10 belly buttons, and he just told me when I was a kid, he was like, yeah, that's how you know if someone's a wizard. They got 10 belly buttons. And I was like, yeah, absolutely.
Did he show you?
So yeah. Oh yeah. All the time.
Were they like in a group, or
where do they?
Yeah, you can't just say that without a diagram.
Were there cords attached?
No, there were surgery scars.
Okay.
But as like a little kid, I was like, yes,
I
absolutely.
mean, that's still cool.
That's how you identify a wizard. 10 belly buttons. He said the more belly buttons someone has, the higher their power is. And I was
what?
Like, math. Yeah.
There's the map. There it is.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, no, my grandpa was like an epic troll, but he was amazing. So,
on the Deca button.
Yeah.
The Deca
so,
button.
Yeah, that's what we did on the farm. And that's like where my whole background came from, was like not so much about denomination, definitely about vibe, just kind of piecemeal stuff together as it suits your personal, you know, like energy. And so yeah, I ended up like I'm an aspiring death midwife now. I feel very called to that work, and you know, I'm about to have a baby in like a month, and I'm like, what's that going to be like now that I'm really exploring more of these cycles of life and death as an adult? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea like what that, but I'm going to figure out a way to witch up that experience. So yeah, it's just constantly evolving all the time. But I feel like I love how much, you know, like Jacky said, like being able to bring together different pieces and just evolve in unexpected directions in your background. And I'm still like in love with starting with Seals of Solomon shit and then being like numerology. Like that's so funny to me too. It was like hell yeah.
Oh yeah.
You get to whatever, whenever. It's non-linear.
It's like, oh, the Bible verses are actually magic spells. And also my birthday might mean something. I'm just like, but
I will say though, I did have a semester class of Bible literature studies, and I actually went through I actually wrote for my final paper like this humongous numerology related thesis about like certain positions of quotes and psalms and different things, and like why numbers are so important. And
Yeah.
my professor literally just went, "Who are you?"
The shit, that too.
So TK, how did your magical practice begin? And in at least 3 ways, how does it relate to math?
Oh my God. Look, I'm gonna be upfront with y'all. 0 math. Which isn't entirely true. I am a hoodoo, and we do use the Keys of Solomon. We also use a lot of Bible verses in a lot of spell work and cooking. A lot of my stuff is I'm a child of an interracial marriage, but my family names on those sides are like Jones and Johnson. So it's incredibly hard to trace back my lineage through my father's side of the family. Most of their names have traded hands, we'll say, over the centuries. And so it's incredibly hard to trace back. And I don't want to give any corporations my DNA. So not doing that. So knowing that a lot of my dad's side of the family has a lot of ties to the Caribbean, to Gullah Geechee, to New Orleans, etc. And several of them are practitioners, which is pretty common in Southern Black families. For mostly, almost none of them are Vodun. Almost all of them are Hoodoo or Ifa. So knowing that, but knowing that initiation is not really for me, I am more of an animist than I am an initiated practitioner of Ifa. So a lot of it is just trying to be closer to ancestors and trying to kind of, I guess, find identity in a world that has worked so hard to erase it.
Absolutely. And I feel like that last part,
Also,
even
fuck
though
math.
yeah, even though, I mean, there are some really weird mathematical similarities, but I feel like the 3 of you have really different paths into the occult. But I feel like the thread that kind of strings everything together is that it all ultimately boils down to seeking to understand the world, seeking to understand who you are in any sort of true sense, whatever that means. And then also what your relationship is to that world that you are trying to understand more broadly. A little bit of a different question. Let's talk about what isn't the occult, or what misperceptions are out there. When I wrote this question, my thought was like media and pop culture pet peeves, but I imagine it could be interpreted in a different ways.
Oh.
Okay.
Number 1, it's not fast.
Yeah.
It is
That one.
not fast. Don't believe for even a second that shit's over like that, because it's not. It's not fast. 0 immediate gratification out of it. So if you're in it for that, if you want to be levitating and shit, go watch some David Blaine, cause but you in the wrong magic class. Like it's not fast at all. It's not fast. Zero immediate gratification. But also, like, one of the big things, ain't no spiritual person out there gonna do for you what you ain't willing to do for yourself, really. So if you trying to fuck around and find out, you're gonna. But like, the investments that they have in the world, spiritually or otherwise, they don't care that you don't want to get up and pay your phone bill. So if you pray for money, you're not gonna get it. It doesn't put any good into the world, in my experience, to be like, I wish I could find $20 in this couch.
So specific.
You all wish for a really long time, buddy. Buckle up, buckaroo.
Yeah.
You're gonna be there every day. The only way that magic will help you find $20 where you least expect it is if every day you put a penny in that money tree in the corner. And then at the end of 2,000 days, you dump those pennies out.
There it is.
There's your math for the day.
Yep.
I did it. And
You
honestly,
did.
I had to think of that joke before I started talking because I was like, what if I only say 200 pennies? How many pennies are in 200?
You nailed it though. You nailed it.
You nailed it.
Oh my gosh. I love that the chat is,
Yeah.
but I lit a candle. Shouldn't money appear? Like,
Shouldn't money
which is
appear in my
so funny. Like I did grow up with the Santeria, like the candle magic with the novenas
Yeah.
and all of that, right? And so it's like, you have to pick the right saint. You have to, like, maybe if you really want to juice your shit up, you got to throw in like an applicable milagro in there, maybe put the right kind of oil in there, like throw a bay leaf in that shit and then put it there. And then guess what? That shit's still burning for 9 fucking days.
Yeah.
It's still 9 days.
In those 9 days, you're have
working.
to come into work.
Yes.
Yeah, surprisingly enough.
You have to go to work.
Yeah,
It's like, I'm praying for justice in this court case. But then like you walk outside and you're blah, blah, I pray for justice. You're standing there praying and justice is going to find you.
Right, yeah. Yeah. I will say I have a very lighthearted and a pedantic pet peeve in pop culture and media. This is like so specific. And every single time it drives me up the wall, Sam Hain. Every time. I'm like, pick a different holiday if you don't know how to say it, or like look it up down. Like
rhyming English verses for spells that are ancient.
Oh, or my personal favorite, everything's in Latin. It's like,
everything's in Latin.
Using guys. Using a Catholic exorcism to get rid of any sort of entity that is not directly Catholic.
That's my favorite one.
Confuse the ghosts out of here.
Yeah.
The ghosts are all leaving. They're like, just stop yelling at me, man. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
like,
even know
what
what
are
you're
you
saying. Like,
what
I
are you
didn't even do
doing?
anything. I was just sitting here.
It's like, ooh, calm down, Karen. Like, shit. Fucking Chinese or African hungry ghosts just sitting there like the whole time being like, ooh, the food sucks.
Yeah. They're mostly, if anything, they're complaining about the food. So they're just like, look, we have to make this better. This is awful. We need to talk.
Is this salt? Is this salt, Charlotte?
No. The worst part is when when they consider pepper spicy, and then that's when they have to give a judgmental look at them.
I feel like this suddenly became a different panel.
Yeah.
It's so related.
Catholic
Okay. Are we gonna pretend though that spices and like particularly ethnic regional spices are not directly tied to folk magic? Because
Very tied.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Yes.
So this can be both a culinary exchange and a panel on.
Get some cayenne pepper. Get rid of the bad energy. Get some cayenne pepper.
There it is.
Also,
every time I go.
I mean, it's good pepper spray anyway, so you might as well use it.
I swear, every time I go to my mom's house, she's like, I just pruned my bay laurel. You have to take these to your house. And it's like fucking branches of bay leaves. And she's like, you just don't know. You just don't know. You're going to need these. I'm like, yeah, probably.
So much money. So much money.
So I just have like huge branches of bay laurel just like in my house, on my walls, hanging in my kitchen. Like, just everywhere.
Grind it
like,
down. Sell it as
it's like, it's like, see, how many bamboo stalks do you have in your house at this point? And you're just going, all right, I think the 20th one is enough prosperity and wealth, fam. I think we're good. No, we're getting another one. Why? We're supposed to give some away.
I think this actually. Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say also like minor pet peeve. Magic can be sexy. Magic outside of the Western viewpoint, especially African spiritualism, it's not sexy. Like it's usually like there's always like a voodoo scene in those movies where it's like an orgy or something like that. And I'm like, I've never Not once. We're all wearing white dresses, got a big old headdress on. Like somebody's covered in oil, and we're just like kind of hanging around singing and praying. We've got like, like little rattles and like palm fronds and things like that. There is nobody having sex in the middle. I understand like what the great rite is for a lot of people's a lot of people's spiritualities. We don't have that. That's not a thing. And so when you watch American Horror Story season 3, arguably the worst season, fucking at me on Twitter.
Absolutely. I agree with that one.
Don't give a shit.
Absolutely the worst one.
When you're watching it and you're watching like these voodoo rituals with like all this fucking sex and shit in them, and you're like, damn, man. Like a lot of those rituals are even more like, I guess, Puritan-esque or prudish than like even some Catholic rituals. So what are we doing? Just because it's exotic doesn't mean that it needs to be sexualized or fetishized in that way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Every
Thank
time.
you for bringing exotic into this, because I get like my face immediately got so warm. I got so mad.
Yeah. It's
that
like
word, like I get so fired up about it.
Take the orgy scene out of your weird like Fae YA.
Take it out of there, but put it into my practice though. Okay.
It was like all the stuff y'all took and gave to us, and you couldn't give us fucking orgies. Like what the fuck?
Yeah, sorry, man.
Hot orgies.
I know. See, and I'm over here like in like the side of my family that is not of like Western European magical practice, that is of like, indigenous Central American practice, is like there's a lot of very sexy stuff going on, but also then there's like, no, just sweep your damn floors, burn your herbs, burn your candles. But it's just so everyday, like simple. Like so much of Mexican indigenous, like, folk magic is like that. But then we also have like fucking like cacao ceremony, which can look like a million different things. And that can be very, very sexy, or like really not at all. And it's so individual. And so like that, I really vibe with that. The like, you can make it as sexy as you individually feel drawn to, and that's all totally like within the scope of traditional practice. Or it can just be little old lady cleaning her house, like whatever, you're saying like a wish over that one plant that you've been taking care of for like 30 years, or and like it's just such quiet little everyday things.
Sometimes cleansing rituals and there is like a lot of merit in the magic practice. It's in hoodoo, it's in a lot of African rituals as well. And sometimes the cleansing ritual is just acknowledging that you feel better when your house is clean.
Yep. Yep.
And sometimes the sexy rituals are putting magical anointed oil on a talisman and exercising your passion in that way through prayer and ritual.
Beautifully phrased.
I was like, I don't know where to step with it. I was like, we saw like the drug thing where it's like, hey, it's fine, it's not off limits. And then I was like, can I talk about voodoo wee-wees? Can I talk about magical marmalades?
I feel like we've already kind of veered in this direction, but I want to formally invite people to this question, which is, what does the occult actually look like in real life? Like, what is your like everyday, weekly, monthly, whatever that means to you, just like day-to-day practice?
Snacks.
TK.
Snacks.
I mean, you have to eat. If you're practicing, you got to eat. You got to have some energy.
Have to. I mean, you gotta. It's, where does that energy come from if not from a can of Pringles?
Or 2 cans of butter beans.
2 cans of the Lord's blessed butter beans.
I swear, if somebody just goes, my start of my magical journey is eating a can of butter beans, and we're all just gonna go, oh, we
Like, call me when you level up to 2. Thanks.
Yeah, so for me, it's a lot of cleaning my house. A lot of hoodoo and kitchen witchery takes place in the kitchen. So for me, a lot of it is in cooking meals, in cleaning the kitchen, cleaning the house, cleansings, and cleansings in like the most literal form of like just taking the time to ritualize everyday tasks. I do have an ancestral altar in my kitchen that needs to be moved because it's getting too big for the pop-up table that I have it on. So eventually it's going to be on shelves in my workspace, just so I have something that feels nice in here. Something that gives me a little moments in the day to find reverence and kind of center myself more. So right now it's in the cacophony that is my kitchen, but sometimes it's just like finding those moments to care about yourself and give back to the world around you. So tossing out like sunflower seeds or frozen peas or something for birds when you know that they're nesting soon, or things like that. Just like taking a few minutes to make a positive impact on the rest of the world.
That's lovely.
Thanks. I lied. No. Thanks. I go check my money tree. Just like
There's gotta be at least
Doing
200
good, right?
pennies in there.
there's got to be at least 200 pennies in this money tree.
I can go next.
Go ahead.
So for me, because you can't. So the thing is, so I will say, I do follow some Taoist practices, but I'm not a Taoist, because the people who are called Taoists are the actual full-fledged like practitioners, the one who actually went through and became real Tao, like actually learned the rituals and the customs and actually had to memorize all of the text. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not that person. So I'm like, but I do some of their practice. I do follow like certain rituals and things. The one thing I like to do is I like to start my day with like a little bit of a meditation or something where I'm just sitting still and I'm just trying to like ease myself into the day, because you want to gather your energy and actually pool it, because even as a practitioner, even in life, you want to get yourself ready to brace to like face the day. So you want to do that give yourself that quiet moment to do that. And so I usually start that every time I wake up. I'll usually like, all right, get out, find a nice little quiet spot to sit, and just try to calmly not think too much about anything. Just let the energy of the universe tell me where we're going, and I just come along for the ride. Because sometimes in life, things will come and go, and so you have to kind of just figure out how you want to navigate it, because you can choose how to interact with things. And if you want to engage it, you engage it. If you don't, you don't. But it's coming your way, so you have to figure out at some point like how you want to deal with it. So you want to be able to figure that out. And so I usually will take that time to spend probably like maybe 20 minutes just to kind of calm myself or get myself ready for the day. And I do have a small altar, but that's usually most predominantly used for like my divination work. So I only use that for that. We don't really have like a family altar for like either, because my family does Buddhist practices as well as Taoist practices, but we don't have like a dedicated altar or anything like that. We have, I think the most crude thing we have is probably just pictures of like my great grandparents and family members and like arranged. And so that's as much of an altar as you're gonna get in my family, because we're mostly non-practicing. So I'm the only one who actually tries to remember things, and then Grandma's the only one who actually remembers all the dates for all the major events and holidays. So I'll usually be like, Grandma, what's the calendar say? So, because there's different customs and different things. So I will say for me, I have to always also check a calendar just to be like, so there's a little bit of routine in that ritual as well. And I do, I also will probably in the evenings, I will actually spend the time again to meditate again, because I'm a night owl, so I need more energy again in the nighttime cycle as well. So it's like, so for me, that's my practice is to take time for yourself to honor yourself and as well as to ensure that you have the energy to face any challenges that come your way.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Friday?
Yeah, I think there are two different categories here of daily practice. There's the self practice, and then there's like what you put in and what you put out, input output channels. And I definitely am a big fan of the quiet journaling as a part of my everyday ritual. I've gotten really into the like bullet journal situation, and just every day it's a totally different layout, and I just vibe with it. That's my answer for everything. Just vibe. But every day, I'll draw a card. I'm into the tea and tarot combo of things. I'll pick my deck that matches the aesthetic of the page that I'm working on for the day, that matches the aesthetic of the tea leaf and the tea wear. So it's such a small little nerdy, like, like journal ritual thing. It's so everyday, but every piece of it is very intentionally chosen to form like a flight. Right. And I think of everything in terms of tasting and composition, like everything is being plated, just because I was a chef for a million years. And also I literally taste words and ideas and stuff because of my brain chemistry. So like everything is like literally a tasting flight. So everything has to be composed in such a way that it is harmonic. And then, I draw my card of the day and say, okay, what's my lesson? What's my practice? Sometimes I do write vibe. What's my vibe today? Often. And then that's kind of my jumping off point for the day. At some point during the day, I have to find time for myself to do, like tea rituals, sit down proper gong fu style, like really take my time, choose a leaf that's really speaking to me. Again, choose tea wear that's really speaking to me, and give myself the time to be present, at least a little bit, at least peripherally, even if I'm also doing other things at the same time, so I can taste how the tea is evolving over multiple infusions. And there's something about that evolution of experience that really, speaks to me, and I find very grounding. And it's like a little gift to myself to get to experience the evolution of a gift to myself. So those are little practices that are more the input channel, just kind of small everyday magic for myself. And then the output channel is I'm very very community oriented and very like, I guess I have a leaning toward facilitation of space and energy for other people. And I think that's where a lot of my magic output goes, because I do taste people's like energy and their moods and things like that. I've found that I'm uniquely qualified to, people come into my tea shop and they say, oh, I don't really know what I want. And I'm like, I do, because I can taste where like your, flavor aura has a dent or a chip or a crack or needs polishing. And I can cross-reference with this library of teas and herbs and things. So I can find exactly that right thing that you need right now. And I got to do that 3 times already today before coming on this panel. And it's just so gratifying to know that you've matched a person with an experience, like a beautiful plant brewed just so that is exactly what they need to be in the space that they want to be occupying in that moment. So I think there's, I don't know, I used to think of it as like NPC life. Like, oh, I'm like the tavern keep, where like the adventurers all come and I'm kind of in the background. I'm like the help, right? And then anymore, I've come to see it as like, no, that's a damn gift. I get to facilitate these beautiful moments and these like whatever's going on with people, these little moments of healing, these little moments of just peace, of reflection, these little moments of like energetic burst, whatever is needed. It is my gift to get to be a part of that in that way and get to provide that for people, the space and the tea and everything. So that's I think where most of my magic energy goes these days, is in, and I will say at the tea house, we did paint sigils underneath the paint on all of the walls, so that the tea shop itself is a literal charm box. And they're all, sigils that we drew up for like, protection and peace and prosperity and like happiness and love and safety and all of that. So people come in and I'm like, now you are in my little charm box where everything is okay. And we facilitated the space for you to be okay. And that's the big magic that I feel like I put out every single day. So that was kind of a lengthy answer.
No, I loved hearing that. I really relate to a lot of like little aspects that everyone brought up about like ritualizing everyday things, kind of focused on things like focus and reflection. We had talked earlier about like how magic doesn't work. Like it's not like lighting a candle and then like $100 like randomly appears in your account, right?
Oh man, but could you imagine?
Man,
I would
that
love
would be so
pennies.
nice. I'd buy so many candles.
I'd love to give an example, if you guys don't mind
$100.
my sharing a short story of what magic might look like. So I was dealing with a misunderstanding on the internet, on Twitter, like gasp, right? And because of this misunderstanding, this other person who was the other half of the misunderstanding was spreading a lot of falsehoods, reaching out to people who knew me, saying some insulting things about my race, all of which was not okay. And I kind of freaked out. So to help myself sort of calm down and feel like I could do something, I decided to write a spell and create a spell bottle. And through that process and just the subconscious reflection of that whole process, and I think putting like some energy out into the universe, immediately after that spell, I was lying down, I felt a lot calmer, and it kind of just occurred to me that in this calmer state and through this reflection, that even though I'm not okay with some things the other person said, there were some things that I did do where they have a point and they want a public apology. I can apologize for that part without saying that some of the things they did were okay. So I did that fully expecting it. They're so angry. They're not going to accept my apology. It's just going to make things worse, but at least I did the right thing. They did a 180. As soon as I got the apology, they calmed down. They were like, you know what? I recognize that I did this, this, and this, and that was not okay. I really am okay, cool that you apologized and we were able to sort things out. So that's kind of what magic might look like. That was actually surprisingly fast. It is not usually fast, like TK said.
Yeah.
I will say it's less than 10 seconds. It's more than 10 seconds. That's
Yeah.
But did you get $100?
Then $100 showed up in my bank account, and I was like, "What?
What?
Turned around and tripped over a bag of hamburgers. Incredible."
Jump around in my list of questions a little bit just because I know we're coming up on time. I want to make sure we give some like actionable tips or next steps for folks who are listening to this panel either live or later, connect with some of the ideas we've brought up and want to know how they can get started. So if someone is seeking to begin a magical practice, what advice do you have? What books or other resources do you recommend?
I actually had, that's the only question I prepared for.
Jacky, go for it.
Broomstick, no.
So I will say if anyone's interested in like Taoism or at least like getting into Taoism or at least understanding a little bit more about it, there is a great YouTuber. He's actually a Taoist priest and he's a YouTuber and he actually breaks it down in a very approachable way. Where it's not like, and I will like, I just enjoy the way he just breaks it down, makes it approachable, and it's not like it, because sometimes when you talk to other Taoists, they're very like cloistered, and this one is the least cloistered I've ever had to engage with. So you're gonna look for Chi, CHI in nature, and that's all in one word. It's on YouTube. It's G Sifu. He's a very down-to-earth guy. I like his videos a lot. And if you want to like read anything about it, I would say like probably the big one would be like, if you just want like a good solid foundation of like what is Taoism, Ava Wong wrote a book called Taoism: An Essential Guide. That's a very approachable one as well. And then if you want to read the actual one of the primary texts for Taoism, which is the Tao Te Ching, that one I would say don't actually buy any generic version of it, because you'll get three things. You'll either get the one that says Tao Te Ching with Lao Tzu as the writer, which Taoist scholars debate about regularly whether Lao Tzu was actually the real writer or whether it was a culmination of writings. So better to do I found something better, and I found it probably like 10 years ago, and it's probably one of my favorite ways to approach it. It's a book that's a translation and a commentary on the Tao Te Ching. So it's actually a translation of the text in English, but then also providing actual linguistic commentary. So it actually explains the linguistics and why certain word choices would be this way. And so that would be a translation of Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching and Wang Pi's commentary. So what you want to just look for is, if you want to Google it, it would probably be something like Tao Te Ching and Paul J. Lin, because that's the one who translated it. So that's who you're looking for. It was from you will know because it was done by the University of Michigan. That's how you'll know.
All right.
Yep. And then if you want to actually know one of the divination tools that I like to use, it's the I Ching. And actually, G Sifu has a great video on the I Ching and actually explaining, like, you don't need that giant book, but it's a good foundation for you because the book is really huge. But G Sifu has like a great video just explaining you don't need it. You just need to understand what it means and what it's trying to tell you. And so, but the I Ching is a great thing to just understand what he's coming from and things like that.
Very cool. Friday?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of myself in my own practice of books, and at first this is something that I felt like I was doing like wrong as I was exploring my own practice. Like, oh, none of these books speak to me. I don't share a perspective with anything that I'm finding. And it just feels like, I'm reading a thing and trying to follow somebody else's path for me. And as someone who's a huge reader, like very much of the like bookworm nerd, studious kind, like this, it felt like there was like a disconnect there. And my practice opened up and became so much organic, like so much more organic, just like notably when I just got rid of all of my magic books for myself. And I just started leaning into like, well, what are things that make me feel wonder, or what are things that make me feel safe? What are things that, what are foods that I'm eating that have common spice elements, across them, that I always feel really secure, or I always feel really like invigorated, things like that. And started paying attention to that and saying, okay, it's so in my world, in my body, in my life, these are associations that are very real to me. And I think the thing that kicked this off was I was reading one of those dream translation dictionary things one time, and I was like, oh, come on, like, so it was like, if you dream of a white bat, it means that you're gonna die. And I was like, for you, maybe. No, doubt it. White bats are dope as hell. Like, I'm so into that. Like, that would never mean anything scary or negative to me. And I was like, oh, okay, so maybe it's like other people's definitions are not actually applicable to my own practice. And that was so liberating. So just like, I guess in the like being open to my own practice and my own, symbolism and associations can look totally different from other people's. And it's not a static thing. That was so liberating. And, you see a lot of like herb correspondence charts and things like that, or like gem correspondence charts. And I'm like, dude, I found this rock down the creek. It turns out it's a quartz, like rutilated quartz. And I just like really like it. It's my buddy now. And I carry it around and I feel good. And that's fine. Like, that's all I need to know about that. So I think the farm kid background has been really helpful in that, like, you don't need to necessarily have like the fancy, super specific, whatever tools and gear and blah, blah, blah. If it's something that speaks to you and you resonate with it, if you vibe, man, then like, that's something that's probably going to be a good and useful resource for you specifically in your practice. And if you can let go of attachment to what practice looks like for other people, and instead just say, again, what is it that brings me a sense of wonder? Because, a part of my everyday ritual is I like to finish off my evening with recreational algebra. I'm sorry, TK, but yes, I do, because I find it so grounding. And it fills me with a sense of wonder, even if it's just factoring out polynomials. I'm like, this is beautiful. It's elegant. And it makes me feel so connected, and it's like so soul opening for me. So yeah, that's right. I was playing with matrices this morning. Deal with it. And
oh
so
man,
like,
matrices.
I know, right? Inverted
made up
matrices.
words.
So yeah, like, that's something that a lot of people would be like, in what universe is inverting matrices witchcraft? And I'm like, in mine, sucker, because it makes me feel a sense of wonder. It makes me feel a sense of connection and curiosity. And that is a kind of magic. So anyway, that's what I have to say about that. If it works for you, if it brings you that, that sense, I'm drawn to this and it feels empowering, then that is a totally valid and legitimate form of magic. So that's what I think.
What about you, TK? What math books would you recommend?
Everything was great in that conversation, but then Friday was just like, and this morning and it was static from there on. I was like for me, I am gonna go in a less intuitive direction, and say that if you're looking to get into, especially read a book, especially hoodoo or any spiritualism or magical practice that is built upon the foundation of the diaspora, especially when it comes to results of colonialism or horrific historical practices that made it so that a demographic could not openly practice their magical or spiritual practices without fear of violent retaliation, like hoodoo. Read a book, read a history book, read every history book. You need to acquaint yourself with the community that is using this practice. And sometimes that means that you need to do some serious historical research and you need to do some serious introspection and ask yourself, is this for me? Not, is this something I would enjoy, but am I the person that they are protecting themselves from? Am I representative of a larger societal issue that they will feel threatened by when I join that practice? And so you need to educate yourself on the demographics that practice it and any historical lessons that need to be taught from there, and really do some introspection and see like how you can not only elevate that craft and take from it, but what you can give back to it in that community, because any spiritualism that you get involved in should make you question the world around you and what you can do to make it a better place. And if that means that maybe you don't get to be burying chicken bones in your front yard because you don't have any understanding of the reason why those chicken bones are so fucking important, and how basically like you wouldn't waste food, like when these chicken bones could be going in the stock, and instead you're imbuing them with magic and power and intent and energy to protect your home and your loved ones. And what a gracious form of love that is for a struggling, starving Southern family. Maybe you need to look a little bit more into it. Maybe you need to be looking into the history and the customs and the cultures of people that you want to integrate and emulate.
Absolutely. I'm glad you touched on that. One of the questions I was hoping we would get time to delve into was kind of talking about the difference between like gatekeeping superstitions within various magical practices, like you can't do tarot until someone gifts you a tarot deck, versus cultural boundaries where maybe a particular type of practice is not open to people outside of that group. TK touched on it a little bit, but Google is also an awesome resource. So do some research. We have 2 minutes left now. So let's do some outros. And if you have like a short little tidbit that you were wishing that you could get to, that you want people to hear, feel free to include that. We'll go in backwards order. So this time we are starting with Friday.
Oh, I have to have a tidbit?
You don't have to, optional tidbits.
Optional.
Okay, optional tidbits. Now I want tidbits, but whatever. Like the donut holes, TK, Canadian donut holes.
Oh,
I just don't worry. Anyway,
I've never had
I'm Friday. This is my outro.
Oh my God.
I got you, Friday. I got you. I understand what you were putting down.
Thank you. Jackie understands me. I'm Friday, and I like tea and friendship and snacks, and that is a kind of witchcraft in my household. So there. Yeah, I have no Timbits for you. Just love.
All right, cool. TK.
Sorry, I burped. Anyway, hello, it's me. It's TK. I write spooky stories. If you like them, read them. Congratulations. My tidbit is that one of the questions that was on here was, since this is a tabletop convention, what horror or occult themed games do you love? And I'm gonna just go ahead and shout out Lisa's Melancholia, which was a game I played last summer when she was still developing it. And it was incredible. It's about lonely ghosts seeking companionship. And I don't think it's out, but suck it, losers.
I'm going to help my pals out. Friday, where can people find you on the internet?
Thank you. Yeah, so you can find my tea work at fridaytea.com or at our super cute little charm box tea house in Seattle. And my explorations of death and fiction at fridayelliott.com. That's Elliott with 2 L's and 2 T's.
TK, where can people find you on the internet?
Don't find me. No, tkjwrites.com is where you can find a bunch of free spooky stories. I hope you like them. If you don't tell me.
All right. Jacky.
All right, everybody. I've been Jacky. Sometimes I'm not Jacky. I don't know.
The numerology got me into demonology.
And you can always find me on Twitter at Death by Mage. And if you want to check out anything from Unbreakable Publishers, you can check out unbreakablerpg.com or our Twitter at unbreakable_pub. And I think the one thing I'll definitely add to the TTRPG side. If you like survival horror, I recommend Dread, and just get a Jenga tower and just watch everyone panic for the next hour and a half of their lives. And if you have a bunch of candles sitting around, play 10 Candles instead.
So good.
And also Dread.
Yes.
and also Panic.
So much.
So those will be the two that I want to shout out, because those are great non-dice related RPGs, and they're great for everybody to get into. There's that. And I think the one thing I will throw in is the sky is not falling.
Cool. Thank you. And I have been your moderator, Lysa Penrose. By day, I work over at Drive Through RPG, where you can find a bunch of horror and occult themed games for sure. But at night, I create tarot and oracle content, tarot zines with lots of tarot spreads in them. And pretty soon, my Kickstarted oracle deck is going to go up on my Etsy as well. It's called That Feeling When. And you can find that on Tula of Swords, Etsy, or just find me at Lysa Penrose on social media and find a link that way. Ian and the folks at Gehenna Games, thank you so much for inviting us, and I hope everyone enjoyed our panel. Bye, everybody.